more 5% of our total deer herd every year for the last 5 years. That's why the buck harvest is taking a nosedive. And that's all reality, guys. I mean, I gave this little talk in Reading, and after putting it all together, some guy in the audience, in the question and answer period, he raised his hand. He said, "Well, I understand that we only shot 125,000 bucks, but what are we going to do about the 1.5 million does that are running around out there?" And it was hard not to be sarcastic to him that, didn't you listen? There are no 1.5 million does. That's a figment of that's political talk. That's not scientific talk. That's political talk. That is crisis creation. That is somebody who wants to create a crisis to motivate us to drastically reduce these deer herds that really doesn't even exist. So, Stanfield shootout. Bill Severinghausen is still alive. It's all legitimate. It's all going on, and we have that situation. A little bit about forestry, because I was saying to myself the other day, we've reached the point that forestry is too important to be left to foresters. I genuinely believe that. And I've been doing a lot of forestry shows with my radio show. I not only call for deer project leaders, but I call forestry people. And probably one of the best forestry schools in the entire country is University of Minnesota. And University of Minnesota, there's a couple of heavy hitters up there, hardwood regeneration specialists. One of them is by the name of Dr. Lee Freilich. And he was just terrific. He was just crackerjack. And we talked about acid rain, the complexities of regenerating a hardwood forest and so forth. And he left me with a very profound quote. And that quote was, "You cannot regenerate a hardwood forest with pHs between 4 and 5. The trees cannot grow fast enough to get beyond the deer." And this is irrefutably the situation we're in Pennsylvania. You can't get many people to accept it or discuss it, and politics being what they are, everyone just wants to kill the deer, kill the deer, kill the deer. It just seems easier to kill the deer. Well, killing a deer, the woods are collapsing right before our eyes. If, we can kill all the deer, my feeling is, with the exception of a few pockets, because there are a few pockets of high alkalinity in Pennsylvania, but generally speaking, we were never a state that had high alkalinity. In our heyday, before the acid deposition, before all the pollution, the alkalinity of our soils were probably in the mid-5s, 5.5, 5.7 in our best days. You can go back to the days of Ralph Abel when he was executive director of the Fish Commission back in the 50s. He was screaming. He was watching the streams deteriorate. He was watching the fish belly up. They were monitoring the pH. The insects were dying. He knew then we have a severe acid deposition problem in Pennsylvania. The nitrates and sulfates activate the aluminum that's in the soil and gives us a condition called aluminum toxicity. And it affects fish, it affects wildlife, it affects herbaceous growth, it affects trees. The one tree that seems to be enormously and almost impervious to aluminum toxicity and these low pHs is the black cherry. I mean, that tree will grow in pHs of 3.5. And that's why you go out to the Allegheny Plateau, you see vast stands. It's a monoculture. It is just black cherry. That's all it is. Enormous trees, worth $5,000 a piece, because that soil content is such that you reap what you sow, and that's what the soil is like. That's what the soil will provide, and that's what will grow. This whole nonsense of this qualitative type approach to deer management that, I don't see these shrubs, so since these trees are not here, and since I don't see this herbaceous growth, the deer must have eaten. Well, that's not science. That is speculation. That is not science at all. That is just rush to judgment. You need to consider sunlight requirements and so forth, and pH levels and nutrient levels. Lots of things go into the consideration of whether something will grow in a stand or will not grow in a stand. But I like that the Southern boys got a way about them with their expressions. And a good friend of mine is Larry Hassel, Deer Project leader from great state of Mississippi. And when I tell him about our situations here and so forth, he's always so humorous. He says, Jim, you got to tell those boys, you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. And you know, I mean, it's classic Southern mentality, but that's really what those who walk around and want to see all these dents and, you know, those beautiful hardwood trees, those money trees growing and so forth. There's a lot more to having that happen than just kill the deer. We have, most of our difficulties stem from the history and the evolution of where we are. Now, we all know about the Great Cutover. We all know about the Great Cutover between 1880 and 1920. The state was cut over, and it was the rape and run days. Wood was valuable. You know, a lot of the land was in private hands. The state was cut over. The deer were killed. Game laws were practically non-existent. They had just started. Enforcement was very poor. We were down to 10,000 deer in this entire state. The state was cut over. Very, very critical thing happened at that particular time, and that is the forest grew back without the impact of deer. An unnatural, unbalanced forest grew back. What you had was you had very, very high success rates of regeneration by very valuable hardwood trees. And our position, the soils, the temperate, the climates here, we produce the finest quality hardwoods on the planet. That's what happens right here. We are the hardwood capital of the world. A tree out of Pennsylvania, a hardwood tree out of Pennsylvania is more valuable than a hardwood tree out of Virginia or North Carolina or Georgia or Arkansas. The really premium quality, tight grain, furniture quality veneers come from this state. And you go back and you look at the harvest numbers from the 1920s and 1930s. You look at 1938 when we closed the buck season and we just harvested does. We killed 185,000 does that year in 1938 was the estimate per the Game Commission's book. We probably only had 250,000 deer in the state. The whole you know, dialogue that we were overrun with deer and so forth, and forestry was already cementing itself as a very, very powerful force. Forestry already knew at that time that we were sitting on a gold mine with this particular regeneration, this unnatural regeneration of not having any deer and getting this profuse, very dense. Even till today, they call our woods overstocked. We have, you know, when you count up the basal areas, the base in the forestry industry, you know, you only want a certain amount of basal area per acre because you can overcrowd a stand and thus affect the health of the entire stand. We're way above all that stuff because the desire here in Pennsylvania is to raise veneer timbers. The goal is to raise veneer timbers. And how do you raise veneer timbers? You raise veneer timbers with a very, very high success rate of regeneration. You pack those trees in as tight as you can. You get them into the canopy as quick as you can. You close off the sunlight as fast as you can. You want the limbs to fall off. You don't want limb growth. That's the whole point of raising a veneer tree. You want to restrict limb growth so that when you do cut that tree and you do put it in the lathe and you do begin to spin it and take those quarter-inch layers off, you don't want imperfections in those trees. And that's what we're doing here. I liken it to raising veal. You know, we all know about raising veal. They don't let the veal walk around in the pasture. They put it in a box. They restrict its movement so that its muscles don't get tough. We're doing the same thing. We're trying to grow too many trees per acre is what we're trying to do. It's an extreme forestry practice to generate this limbless, very perfect type of veneer type of wood. And you know, therein lies a tremendous amount of irony. Because Gary Holt walked around the state, he went and he told everybody the problem with Pennsylvania, the problem with you guys want a deer behind every tree, you want unnatural deer populations, you want more deer than the land will support. Well, to me, that one's a kick in the butt because we don't, the hunters of Pennsylvania don't want more deer than the land will support. We just want sustainable deer management. We want a reasonable amount of deer that we can practice our hobby, that we can hunt. We can count on there'll be deer next year to replace those deer and so forth. We don't want a deer behind every tree, but the irony is the forestry industry wants a tree on just about every square